Where do all of us lonely people come from? Where do those who feel that they have no connection to society, to particular religious figures or people in a religion, perhaps ones that they find through their family or friends, and where do people feel that they are left out in all of their communities that we find in society, whether it be through sports, through philosophy, through religion, through spirituality, through activities in general? Where do we lonely people come from? And how do we not find a place in this seemingly vast array of societal labels and groups and communities? Where do we feel that we are separate? How do we feel that we are separate? Lonely people in general, we aren't categorized as simple people. Anyone who is lonely usually has to do with something that is very complex within themselves. They analyze themselves and we analyze ourselves and realize that there is something intrinsically different between us and anything that is an option between between our mental capacities and those of others, between our spiritual understandings and those of others. We feel that there is a separation beyond the realm of normalcy. And finding a group or a community can be incredibly difficult for those who feel that every group that they've ever encountered is completely separate from who they are, completely misunderstood in a person is what we are. Now, human beings are extremely complex things. The most complex things on this earth, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to our mental capacities, our mental individualities. And this is why so many individual issues are raised in wars and spiritual conflicts, and there are many different spiritual masters who have vastly different spiritual understandings of reality than the spiritual masters that have come before them. But whatever you find yourself working towards, whatever you find yourself finding kin in, mainly an idea, but also people, a group of people. Don't let anybody that is in your past or in your family or in your friend group tell you that, no, you shouldn't do that. If you find commonality with some group out there, with a group of humans that you feel there is something in common between them and yourself, then don't let anybody allow you to stray from that. Don't let anybody encourage you to break off from that group. If you feel like you found a home somewhere, then you have to work towards it. You have to march towards that destination so that you can meet your inner battle. Because that inner battle is what the whole world is here for. Everything in the world that we encounter is hinting at something within that we need to address, either in commonality or rejection. Something that we need to confront. And as we get older in life, we find that the essence of reality itself has certain degradations. We get closer to death as we age. We start to lose some of the mental capacities that we had when we were younger as we age. We start to get more rigid in our ideology and are less open to the possibilities of what could be the nature of reality, of God, of religion, what have you. But I would always recommend staying open to any ideas that lead you in a direction you may not have truly understood. If you learn something new, don't be afraid of it. If you learn something that you felt was incorrect at an earlier date, but now it sounds good, check it out. And this is very vague, but this has to do with spirituality and religion, so it has to be very vague if I'm trying to speak to everybody, and I am, because I'm always trying to speak to everybody involved in whatever spiritual mission they find themselves in, because I don't feel like everybody is supposed to be one religion. I might be Hindu, but that doesn't mean that I feel like everybody has to be Hindu. But most people in any given religion feel that way. They feel like, okay, if I'm Christian, everybody else should be Christian. This is the only way to be. But I don't feel that way, and I don't think that humanity will progress if we all expect each other to bow down to each other's idea of God, idea of spirituality. And we should not expect even atheists to bow down to our belief in God or the gods, because that is not helping their they're meeting themselves. It is trying to interrupt the meeting with themselves that they've always been traveling towards. Like we've always been traveling towards that same destination, that same interaction between our ego and ourselves. That's what we're all traveling towards. That's what we all must travel towards, and have that meeting and have that interaction. And many people will say, okay, your soul and your ego is like in the same body. How can you say that they're very far away and need any outside influence? But the truth is, the thing that separates our ego and our soul is not necessarily flesh or ideas or electromagnetic impulses or brain matter. What separates us, our soul, between the ego is a lack of understanding. A desire to see oneself as separate from everything else. The soul is inherently connected to everything, and the ego is inherently desires for a disconnection from everything so that it can gain its own power, so that it can gain its own representation of itself and bolster that representation of itself and make it concrete in the material world, and encourages every other part of us to embrace that separation that the ego wants, that material separation that it wants for itself. Now, there are a few reasons in the world why people should harm one another. There are a few reasons why we should think that, okay, somebody believes something else, so we should harm them. But this seems to be the majority of human warfare. The difference of belief, the difference that we believe this political or religious idea and somebody else believes this political or religious idea, so they are inherently our enemies, so we should either defend ourselves or preemptively attack. And this is how war has gone for so many thousands of years as far as recorded history goes, records that we have. But if we choose as individuals to say, okay, I need to get to know myself, I need to realize what my spiritual understanding is as an individual, not just accept somebody else's understanding of reality or of God or of soul, but try and find my own understanding. And even if your own understanding is adopting somebody else's, you can't let somebody else tell you what you should adopt. You can't let somebody else tell you what your political viewpoint should be. You can't let somebody else tell you that you have to be a part of this so-called army. When I say army, I mean metaphysically. You shouldn't let somebody else recruit you politically or spiritually or philosophically to their cause just because they say so. Don't let somebody shove you into that corner. Decide for yourself. As we advance along the spiritual path, there are a few things to take into account. The spiritual path is not something that can be described by other people. We have to meet it based on our own definitions of the different milestones along the spiritual path. For instance, if we're very bad at containing our aggression, and there is a particular psalm or script from the Bhagavad Gita, or a particular spiritual quote from a Native American tribe that this is very simple, but that we take up to combat that aggression, that is following the spiritual path that we find ourselves on. But if somebody else tells us, okay, this is the teaching you have to follow in order for you to conquer your aggression, to conquer your anger, then that is somebody else trying to force something onto you. But this is the reason why you have to consider for yourself. You can't allow other people's considerations to be adopted by your own mind. Your own mind has to work through these things by itself in order to meet your soul, to work towards the spiritual path that everybody is trying to work towards, a meeting with the source. And the source, which is soul, which is in everything, cannot be progressed for you. You have to progress upon it yourself. In conclusion, I would like to say that you are a completely different individual than anybody that has come before you. You are in a completely different religious, spiritual, political, philosophical being than anybody that's come before you. You can have guides along the way. I have guides. I follow certain books. I follow certain spiritual paths. But you have to understand your relation to reality, your relation to the universe, and your relation to every other being purely by your own relation. It can't be by a relation or an understanding that somebody else gives you. You have to progress by yourself, ultimately. You have to, because language isn't enough. And anything anybody communicates to you through language, no matter what language it is, no matter how spiritual or how not spiritual, how political, philosophical, or any country's language, you have to understand it for yourself, in yourself. And when you start communicating with yourself, between your ego and your soul, within your own mind, within your own heart, you start to develop your own language that goes much deeper than words, that goes much deeper than descriptions, dictionary definitions, synonyms. And when you truly understand that depth, when you start to develop your own internal language, that's when you find your path. And of course, you can consider yourself Christian, Muslim, Hindu, any spiritual path. You can consider yourself Wiccan. You can consider yourself an atheist or an agnostic. But there will always be that internal language that is absolutely necessary for you to develop in order for you to meet yourself, in order for you to become yourself, the self you were always meant to be. So develop that internal language. Develop a connection to who you truly are, and realize how much of the influences are impeding you that were introduced by society. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been interesting. This has been from the heart, and I really hope that you soon come to understand yourself, or at least get on the path. But hey, thanks for watching. Feel free to hit that thumbs up down there if you like this video. Feel free to shoot a comment. I respond to most. And y'all have a great day.